Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Pooja Thakur, and I'm the Communications Planner for Elections Calgary, and I will be moderating today's information session. The format for today's session is a presentation followed by question and answer. You can type your questions into the chat at any time, and you'll have the option to submit your name, or you can do so anonymously. We will be grouping similar questions together, and we'll do our best to provide an answer after the presentation. We may not be able to get to every single question, but we will try to do so in the time that we have available. We are still working on a few details, so if we don't have some of the information today, we will make note of it and try and provide an answer at a later time. We will also be posting all of the questions and answers on electionscalgary.ca along with a copy of the presentation. And just so you know, the session is being recorded. So the recording of the session will also be posted on the Elections Calgary website and YouTube channel. Please note that the information in this presentation is provided for convenience of reference only. So there may be a few details that are modified or changed as we get closer to election day. We appreciate your patience and ask that you bear with us if we have any technical glitches. And now I would like to pass this over to Amy Newton, who is the Strategic Legislative Analyst for People Management with Elections Calgary, who is leading the presentation.
Thanks, Pooja. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Amy Newton. I am the Strategic Legislative Analyst, so I'm the People Management with Elections Calgary. I am the project lead for the recruitment of election workers for this upcoming general election. Before we get started, I just want to make a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that this presentation is taking place on the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which include the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. Hopefully I said that correctly. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. I am very excited to have this live information session for all of you, as this is the first time that we have offered a live information session for our recruitment strategy. I would like to thank all of you for taking interest in our amazing community, the democratic process, and working with the City of Calgary. Elections Calgary is committed to run a safe, legislatively compliant, and accessible election. So, today, what we will cover in this session, we will review the position descriptions, the eligibility, advance vote versus election day, advance vote working hours, election day working hours, the training hours, the pay, compensation that you'll receive for working, any preparation needed for the work, COVID-19 precautions, and a demo on how to apply online. And then also after that, again, we'll have a live question and answer session. So position descriptions. The presiding deputy returning officer, so we name that the PDRO. PDRO is responsible for the overall conduct of the voting station and understands the requirements of each position within the voting station. So this PDRO role is a supervisor of all the positions in the voting station. So they deal with the candidates, the scrutineers, they organize all of the deliveries and materials, as well as maintains the secrecy of the vote and ensures smooth operation of the voting station. So really managing all parts of the voting station, the election workers, and making sure that the voters' experience is good. The assistant presiding deputy returning officer is an assistant to the PDRO. So we call this the APDRO. They assist the PDRO in any supervisory functions when the voting station is open and running. The APDRO also acts as a backup for the ballot clerk and tabulator clerk roles. The next role is the ballot clerk. This ballot clerk, it says it in its name. So it's responsible for the account and distribution of the ballots at a voting station. So if you're good with numbers, this is a position for you. Next is the tabulator clerk. Again, in its name, the tabulator clerk is responsible for the operation of the tabulator. And a tabulator is voting station, it's a voting system where the ballots are entered into a machine, which is called the tabulator. And then that is what gives us a live count and vote on vote day. The next position is the Deputy Returning Officer, which we call a DRO for short. They're responsible for helping the voters complete their voter statement, checking IDs, and issuing ballots and answering any questions. And lastly, we have the Information Officer. The Information Officer is responsible for greeting voters, notifying the PDRO or APDRO of any issues or anything that's happening, if a voter requires assistance, managing the lines, and also answering any questions that voters may have. So it's good to note that this position, it's called the Information Officer, can be filled by people who are 16 and 17 years old, and also by anyone over the age of 18. Any of these roles can be filled by anyone who is over the age of 18. An information officer is the only position that we have that can be filled by a 16 and 17-year-old. Eligibility. If you're eligible to work in Canada, you can apply to work as an election worker. You do not have to be a Canadian citizen to apply. Again, I said that there's only a limited amount of information officer positions, and those are available to people who are 16 and 17 years old, and then every position is available for people who are 18 years and older. When you're signed up to be an election worker, there is an online training course, and it's approximately 1 hour. So we are requiring that you attend this 1 hour online training course before you start the in-person training courses. Now, the in-person training courses could run two hours, or they could run up to 4 hours, depending on what position you're in. So for example, DRO, the Deputy Returning Officer, or Information Officer, those positions would likely have around a 1 hour online and then 2 hours of in-person training. And then for positions of APDRO and Assistant Presiding Deputy Returning Officer, and then the PDRO, those ones will be upwards of 4 hours of in-person training and the 1 hour online training. All the training sessions will likely happen during the daytime between September and October. Next, we have the difference between the advance vote and election day. So advance vote happens from October 4th to 10th of this year. You could be asked to work two to 7 days depending on your availability. So please, in your application, if you're willing to work advance vote and can work up to 7 days, please indicate that on your application. We're also asking, yeah, I said that already, if they can work all 7 days during the advance vote. So during the week of advance vote, this is where voters can visit specific voting stations around Calgary to cast their vote. The voting stations will have ballots from all wards, so a voter can vote at any station in the city. So that's the difference between the advance vote and election day. During advance vote, you can go to the specified locations of voting stations, and a voter can vote no matter where they live in the city. However, on election day, everyone is determined by a ward in the city, which we have 14 of, and then a voting station. So on election day, you have to go to a specified location in order to cast a ballot. For election day, if you want to just work election day, you will be asked to work around 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the entire day in one location. Advance vote working hours. So this is a big chart. There's a lot of information on here. So depending on, so when I said earlier that we'll be asking people to work from 2 to up to 7 hours, or sorry, up to 7 days. This is kind of a snapshot of what the timing will look like. So generally Monday to Friday, the timing looks to be 7 a.m. to around 8 p.m. And then on the weekends, of course, it's shorter. We have 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then on Sunday, we have an even shorter day, which the earliest start would be 9 a.m. and the latest would be 5 p.m. So these also depend on the role, as you can see here on the left-hand side. So depending on what role, the timing does differ slightly. On election day, what are the working hours? So on Monday, October 18th, which is election day, the voting station is open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we're asking workers to start a little bit earlier and end a little bit later to make sure that the opening and closing of the voting station is successful. So you can expect 7 a.m. to around 10 p.m., again, depending on your role that's here listed on the left-hand side. So I spoke about training and the different hours, and here's a good breakdown. So the election worker role, so we have PDRO, APDRO, DRO, information officer, ballot clerk, and tabulator clerk. Again, everyone will have to take a mandatory 1 hour online learning and then transition into an in-person training session that runs from 2 to 4 hours depending on the role. Compensation. So what will you be paid as an election worker? So depending on the role and how many days you work during advance vote, we've listed a range. And I should mention that all of this information that I have been going through is all available on the website, which is electionscalgary.ca. So you can see here that we've separated it out from advance vote and then election day and given you the ranges. So if you're looking for more information, again, please visit our website at electionscalgary.ca. Preparing for work. So when you are in a voting station and you're scheduled for the day, you cannot leave the voting station for any reason. So we're asking that everyone brings plenty of food, beverages to last your entire shift. Things to think about. So bring enough water and beverages to last you the whole day. Food and snacks to last you the entire shift. Some voting stations do have kitchens and facilities where you can eat your lunch, but some do not have that. So we can't guarantee. So please come prepared when you arrive at the voting station. Clothing, again, we live in Calgary, so I hope that we're all familiar with dressing in layers. It's just to ensure that you're comfortable. So if it's a little bit colder that day or a little bit warmer, dress in layers so that you can add on to what you're wearing to make sure that you're comfortable. Footwear, wear comfortable footwear when you're in the voting station. There will be some walking, but there also will be a lot of sitting. So you want to make sure that what you're wearing, you're very comfortable in for the entire day and for the entire shift, as you're not allowed to leave the voting station. So some COVID-19 precautions. So health guidelines. So depending on current health guidelines and requirements, the city and the facilities used for training and voting, wearing a mask may be required. So wearing a mask is strongly recommended. However, it kind of depends on the health guidelines at the time. So information will be made available to all election workers in advance of training and voting days regarding health guidelines. So we'll just keep an eye on the news and see how the health guidelines, if there's any restrictions put into place. Voting station guidelines. So in the voting station, we will be following any health guidelines and requirements of the city. And in addition, we'll likely keep up the regular sanitizing of workstations, sanitizing of high touch points, maintaining physical distancing, and wearing a mask. A good question that we've received from some applicants already is, are vaccinations required? And they are not required. You are not required to have a vaccination to be an election worker. Okay, so I'm going to do a little demo here on how to apply online to our electioncalgary.ca website. So here is the contact information. I do have another slide. If you're interested, you can email electionworkers@calgary.ca, and our general phone number is 403-476-4100. So I'll just quickly switch over and go into a demo and find a website here. So all you'll do is you'll type elections, that's plural, electionscalgary.ca. And I'm clicking enter. So here is the main web page for Elections Calgary. And for the workers, we're going to go to the For Workers tab that's listed here. And there's a couple different ways you can enter in. You can go to election jobs over here on the left-hand side, or you can click down here where it says election jobs. And on this page, you will see all of the information that I just went through. So election worker eligibility, election jobs. So there's the responsibilities, position descriptions down here, as well as the compensation information, worker hours, training hours, compensation again, and preparation for the day, which I went over with everyone, and the COVID precautions. So what we'll do is we're going to apply first as an adult. So anyone who is 18 or older. So you'll just click on this adult apply button and it will kick you over straight over to the contract worker application. And here you will just complete this whole application, answering all of the questions, and then you will submit. And once you submit, that will go into our system, and then we're working on shortlisting and reviewing all of the applications. So that is the adult one. Oh, little survey. And then I'll go back and I'll click on the youth application so you can see what that one looks like. So youth application, you'll note that up here it says only to be used by applicants who are currently 16 or 17 years of age. So students and youth must make sure that they're using this application when they're applying for the information officer role. And again, similar questions, and then you'll just submit the application. Just go back to the presentation here. All right, so that is the end of the presentation. So now we'll open it up to some question and answer. Pooja?
Great, thank you, Amy.
Thanks.
So yes, we have received a number of questions, and as I mentioned at the start, we won't be able to go through every single one, but we will post all of the answers to all of the questions in a couple of weeks, once we've had time to just sort of go through, pull all the information together, and then that will be online for you. So if you don't see your specific question answered today, we will still definitely make an attempt to do that. But I just wanted to flag that in advance. So I'm just going to try and go through some of the main themes and groupings of questions that have come forward. So Amy, one of the first ones is sort of what polling station or voting station would people be at? And how would they be? Are they able to choose which one they're going to, or does that is that assigned to them?
Sure. So what I'll do is I'll actually go back to the website here, and I'll show you on the application. So what we're doing for sorting people is by their address. So that will be in the initial sorting mechanism for how people will be placed in what voting station. So we're trying to put people as close as to their home as possible. And then down here, there's a couple of questions here. So are you able to work during the advance vote period? And then also if you have a vehicle able to lift, sorry, I'm looking for the question where it says, are you willing to work outside your ward? So there is a question on here that says, are you able to work? Yes, are you willing to work outside your ward? There it is, if required. So that is the major question. So if you are not willing to work or don't have accessibility to a vehicle, then you would click no on the application. And that lets us know on the back end that you need to be placed in a voting station that is close to your home, close to your address that you have put on the application. If you have put yes, you're able to work outside your ward, then we will look at where we can place you because there's more flexibility.
Perfect, thank you. Oh, and I think that actually answered a couple of questions.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Thorough.
Um, and we have some questions about working hours and specific days. So are people able to select specific days during the advance vote or specific hours? Or is it that once they're assigned, they have to work all of those, the full shift and all of the days, or kind of what flexibility is allowed there?
Right. So during advance vote, so I've brought it up on the screen here. So the shifts, the timing, there is not any flexibility in the timing. The shifts are laid out. So if you're a DRO, an information officer, or a ballot clerk, it's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And again, you're not able to leave the voting station. So to bring everything with you that you need for that entire shift. As far as the days, we are asking for people if they can work up to 7 days. So when we do a phone call with you, because we're doing phone call interviews for some positions, we'll connect with you and ask you if you're able to work all 7 days. If you are, that's amazing. If you can only work 2 days, then we will try to get you slotted for those 2 days.
Thank you. Some questions in terms of being contacted after they're hired. How will someone be contacted, and when will they be assigned to specific roles? And is there an interview process for all roles or just some?
Right. So there is an interview. I'll kind of go backwards with your questions. There is an interview process for the positions of, and let me just bring them up so that it's a bit clearer here. So the positions of, there we go, presiding deputy returning officer, the assistant presiding deputy returning officer, ballot clerk, tabulator clerk, and only if you are working in a, this will make it a little bit complicated, but in a mobile position, which means you have a vehicle and you're able to go to work during advance vote to different stations. Those are the only ones that would receive an interview. We are mostly contacting everyone via email first. So right now the application is open and we are accepting applicants, and just we're in the shortlisting and reviewing stage of all the applicants. So if you are selected, then you will be contacted over email for an interview, setup meeting, and then if you're applying for a position that doesn't have an interview, that you will still be contacted over email. So it's important then when you are inputting your personal information into the application, that you are very clear with your email address, because that is the main way that we will be contacting you. Now for the interview, all interviews will be over the phone. Did that answer? I think that was answering all your questions.
Yeah, thank you. A question about the training. Is that compensated as well, or is it just the hours worked during the advance vote or election day?
Great question. Yes, let me just go to training here so that you can see the hours. Yes, you are paid for training and also for working. And pay will come probably 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, because it's a lot of people to process, but 2 weeks after election day. So election day is October 18th. So you can imagine 2 weeks after that, that's when everybody will pay for everything. That includes training, their work day, and then depending on their position, there is some pay. Let me go to the pay area, worker compensation here. So there are some positions that include eligible expenses, which would be mileage.
Perfect, thank you. Some other questions coming in. They're not all exactly the same, but there have been a few instances where people are curious if they can go back and make modifications or changes to the original application. So either the position or the days they were available, or working inside or outside their ward. can they go back and make any modifications to the initial application?
Yeah, good question. So unfortunately, no, not to the original application. However, if you do want to switch your role, I would suggest emailing election workers at calgary.ca, and that would be your best form to communicate with the person who is hiring for that particular ward, just to let them know. If you do sign up for a position that has an interview, again, that's a time to talk to, they're called election hiring clerks, who are managing all of this process. So they will be the ones that you'll be connecting with. So I would implore people to email, and then also in their interview really discuss which role is well suited for them if they're not sure which position would be a good fit.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions in terms of people having, and we did go over COVID, but maybe we could just remind people again one more time about what kind of COVID precautions will be in place and what's required, just to make sure that everyone's clear and understands what is required of them or is not required of them.
Okay, great. So here is the screen from the presentation on COVID-19 precautions. So what I can say is that we will follow any health guidelines and requirements that the city puts out. So if there is a mask bylaw, that would apply in the voting station. If we were to be in a voting station today where the restrictions have been lessened, then that's how we would run with the requirements in the voting station. So really, we are following the up-to-date health guidelines and requirements that the city puts out, if that makes sense.
That's great, thank you. Okay, just moving along here. With the application form, is there also a resume that's required, or is it just the application form?
The application is just the application. There's no resume needed.
Okay, thank you. A few questions about the dress code. I know you mentioned we want to make sure people are comfortable and they're dressing in layers and have good footwear. Is there anything else? Is it business casual or any other guidelines people should be aware of?
Yeah, I would say that is, you said it, business casual, and also ensuring that you're business casual, that you are comfortable in that.
Perfect. If somebody is a youth today, so they're 17 years old and applies today, but they will be 18 on election day, which button should they press? How should they apply?
Oh, that's a good question. So if they're 18 on election day?
Yes.
Okay. I would leave that up to the person applying. If you're going to apply for an information officer role and you're 18, that's okay. I would choose the adults apply. The only restriction with the youth application is that the youth application only allows people to apply for the information officer role, where the adult application lets you apply for all roles. And also, you can specify your first, second, and third choice. So let's say you wanted to try a deputy returning officer, a DRO role, because you're over 18, and then next choice was information officer. So that is the difference really in those two applications, where the youth application only lets you apply for information officer. And if you're 18, then that means you're eligible to apply for the other roles, for example, the deputy returning officer.
Thank you. A couple of questions related to training. One is, where will the training take place? And the second is, will the training be available on only one specific day, or will there be a couple of options?
Okay, great. So the training will be held in facilities throughout the city. And sorry, what was the second question?
Is it one specific day or multiple options?
So you will automatically be assigned to a training session, but there are multiple days that you can sign up for. So this is a good time to mention actually that when you sign up and we've gone through the interview process and everything, we will give you access to, let's say you're a successful applicant, we will give you access to Elections Calgary Worker Portal. And in this portal, you'll register, you'll get a username and password, you'll set up yourself, and then in the portal, you're able to view your working details, your assignment details, so the voting station you're working at, the role that you received, and the days and times that you're working, as well as the training information. And there is an option in the training information for you to reschedule if the day that we've selected for you doesn't work, then you can reschedule onto a different day. So there are options for different times and different days if the one that was scheduled for you doesn't work.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions about being notified after an application is sent in. Is there some kind of confirmation that comes through, or when will people be notified if they are successful?
Right. So as soon as you put in an application, you will receive a notice that your application was received. And then I would give it about 2 weeks before we start really going through the selection and recruitment process and booking interviews.
Okay, so if somebody has applied and has not received that confirmation immediately,
Okay.
then could they email and follow up, or is there maybe their application didn't go through?
Yeah, I would send an email to electionworkers@calgary.ca to follow up. When you apply, you will be sent a code, and then that code is for you to set up your account. So if you haven't received anything back to your email, I would definitely contact electionworker@calgary.ca.
Thank you. So a question about payment. Is it by check? Is it a direct deposit? And then is there a T4 that gets mailed out as well? Or how does that work?
Yeah, so after the election, the training, eligible expenses, and the work hours worked, and the shifts, I guess, worked, it will be paid out in a lump sum via check. And then as for T4, I'm going to take that offline and add that to the question and answer that we'll post on the website.
Okay, thank you.
So all information around T4s, we'll post that on the website.
Great. So just want to confirm about the advance vote. So somebody that has called in as well is in the information session today. For the advance vote, are they required to work all 7 days or only certain days?
Right. So we're asking because let me see if I can find, so the worker hours. So you'll see here that the voting station, we have Monday to Sunday locations, Monday to Friday locations, and Saturday and Sunday locations. So we are asking if workers are able to work all 7 days, because the more experienced election workers that we have throughout the entire week of advance vote is the best. And even if you're able to work election day as well, that is even better. We love those kind of people because they have the most experience. So when we have the conversations with you, and you can also email as well if you have questions, but we'll identify which dates that we're asking you to work.
Thank you. Okay. Let's just see, we're we're going through, there's quite a few coming in. In terms of being selected, there's just some questions about, is there sort of a short list, or if somebody has worked for Elections Calgary in the past, sort of how are the positions being filled, and is there any kind of experience or things like that that might benefit someone that's applying?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the application, so this is the contract worker application, so over 18. On here, we have you previously worked in a city, Calgary municipal election, by-election, or vote of electors? No, one event, more than one event. So this experience, and especially working in a municipal election, is kind of our first selection criteria. We're doing it, all of the applications on a first come, first serve basis. And then the second qualifier would be the list of experience. So the more experience that you have working different elections, and specifically in municipal elections, that is you have a greater chance of receiving a position. However, I would say that apply early and apply as soon as possible, because it is first come, first serve, and we have received a lot of applicants so far, and a lot of really great qualified applicants. And we want to make sure that even if you don't have any elections experience, perhaps we can put you in a role in a voting station where you're learning. So an information officer or a deputy returning officer role. You don't need experience in order to work as an election worker, because we train you, and it's paid training. However, if you have previous experience, that does help us in the selection process.
Thank you. For COVID, is there any kind of testing that the city will, or Elections Calgary will be providing for election workers?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Are there more positions that are more people facing than others? We also had a question about someone who has some is hard of hearing, I believe, and so just wanting to see what positions maybe are more public facing versus with just other coworkers.
Yeah, I think all of these positions do have a public facing element. I'll just go through them quickly. I'll go top to down. So presiding, deputy returning officer, I mean, they're mostly issue management and the goings on of the voting station. Same with the assistant presiding deputy returning officer. Ballot clerk will have interactions with each person, because they are, of course, handing them a ballot. We like people who have an accounting background or a really strong math and attention to detail for ballot clerks. Tabulator clerk will have interaction with every single voter, because they are, of course, helping them put their ballot into the tabulator. Deputy returning officer, it is a customer facing role, because they are checking IDs, answering questions. So perhaps an information officer role might be a good fit, but I need to see the background and what exactly accommodations that we would need to provide. But that's kind of most of the positions here do have some kind of a customer-based element.
Great, thank you. Are the locations for the voting stations in schools as well for advanced vote, or are those, do you have any information on that you can share?
Yeah, I have limited information. So that might be a good question to add to the website, so that the people who do have more information would be able to fulfill that. But yes, advanced voting stations are in schools as well as election day. I can confirm that. Not all of them, but a good portion.
Perfect. Someone said that a few weeks ago they applied, but having seen the presentation, it looks like this questionnaire might be more detailed than the version they had filled out. So just to confirm, this only went out last Tuesday. August 3rd. So I guess if that individual said that they applied a few weeks ago, I'm not sure perhaps if you didn't apply to, or if it was an incorrect form or something like that. This just went live last week. So I just wanted to let that person know that they can, maybe just double check which one you applied to, and perhaps fill the form out again, or send an email to the email that's been provided in the chat there. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say there hasn't been any changes to this application form since August 3rd, which it went live. So yeah, as you said, perhaps they applied somewhere else.
There is a comment about, is this for city workers only this year? And if so, would you need to use vacation days to work these hours? So just want to confirm this is for anybody to apply, correct?
It is, yeah. So this application that we have here on the website is for all public.
Perfect.
And anyone can apply.
For dress code, are there any restrictions on colors that might lead to any kind of provincial or federal party colors or candidates or anything like that?
That's a good point. That in the training, you'll actually receive some training on conflict of interest and also being nonpartisan, so being neutral. So yes, we would ask that election workers, when they're working in a voting station, that they remain neutral and not wearing any paraphernalia, buttons, stickers, t-shirts, or of any sort that are associated with someone who is running. When you're in a voting station, you are representing the city of Calgary, and it is important that we all remain neutral in that voting station.
Thank you. Can two applicants in the same household use the same email address when they're applying?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would say yes. However, it's personal information, so I would suggest that people use separate email addresses so that they're keeping their roles separate, because we are sending information for each person and their roles and meeting invites. So we don't want that to be confused between two people. So I would highly suggest that people use two separate email addresses if they have them.
Thank you. A question about scrutineering. Is that considered to be election experience or supervisory experience?
So I'm not able to speak on the scrutineer piece. I do know, however, that there will be an application posted on the website in the near future. So more information on scrutineers will be available on our website, which is electionscalgary.ca.
Okay, but I do believe, yes, scrutineering is not specifically election worker experience. But if you're for scrutineers separately, that would be something else that Amy will, or that will be on the website later, as Amy indicated. Is someone allowed to apply even if they don't live in Calgary?
They are. So let's see the eligibility up here. Worker eligibility. So if you are eligible to work in Canada, you can apply to work as an election worker. You do not have to be a Canadian citizen. So it's interesting because we do have neighboring communities and towns such as Airdrie, Cochrane, Chestermere, Okotoks, who may travel into Calgary and are familiar with Calgary and want to work as an election worker. That is okay. You can do that. You don't have to be a resident of Calgary to work as an election worker.
Thank you. For the pay, is that a daily rate? Is it hourly, weekly? How is that compensation set out?
Yeah, so it's going to be a lump sum that will be given after Election Day, about 2 weeks after Election Day, will be provided by check. It is depending on the role, so it's not necessarily an hourly rate. It's based on the role and how many days you work of advance vote, and if you work let's say you work advance vote and Election Day, it will be based on how many days you work total and then the position that you had.
Thank you. If somebody is related to one of the candidates, can they still apply to be an election worker?
They can. As an election worker, you're working for the City of Calgary, and again, that's where we ask that everyone who's working in a voting station to remain neutral. When you're in a voting station, you're not to promote or wear any paraphernalia of a candidate. You are working for the City of Calgary and just providing the service and the democratic process to voters in a voting station.
Thank you. For some of the for the voting stations that will be sanitized and making sure that they're safe from a COVID perspective, who will be in charge of going through the facility and doing that?
So that will be the election workers. The election workers will ask them to periodically sanitize their station, sanitizing the high touch points. It will likely be the positions of information officer and maybe a DRO that we might ask more often to do some sanitizing just to make sure.
Perfect, thank you. And there's still a couple of questions in terms of modifying the application form, whether it had to do with availability or hours or dates. So just to confirm, you said people can no longer modify their application form, but if they require some changes to send an email, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. And the email again is electionworker@calgary.ca.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just going through the list here.
Gotten through a lot.
Yes, I know. We're doing great here, and thank you all for submitting your questions. And for the worker assignment, so just to confirm, people should have received some kind of confirmation immediately after submitting their form. If they have not received that confirmation, then they should send an email to electionworker@calgary.ca. Once people have done that, can you confirm again when you will start contacting people and letting them know what their placements are?
Right. So before we start doing placements, we will contact successful applicants with interviews. So we're going to start with the advance vote and filling all the positions of the advance vote. So if you're only able to work on Election Day, you likely won't hear from us until maybe for 2 weeks because we're trying to fill the advance vote positions first. So when you apply, you will receive, and systems are finicky. So when you apply, please be patient. You may not get something within the next 15 to 30 seconds. It may take a while depending if the system, how the system is working that day, I would say. They're temperamental. So please be patient. Also check your junk mail. That's been a source of where we have solved many issues of people not receiving a code once they've submitted their application. So please always check your junk mail. And then after that, that's when we start. Right now, we're starting the selection process, reviewing the applications. So we're shortlisting people based on their answers to the application. So whether or not they're able to work advance vote, if they're willing to work outside their ward, and if they have previous experience. So those are kind of the things that we're shortlisting right now to try and place people well, and then we'll connect with people over email. We'll be connecting with people over email in the next week or two to book interviews if the position you applied for has an interview.
Thank you. Some questions about the shift hours. So 12, 13-hour shifts, is that normal for election times? It seems quite long. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So yes, it does seem long, but it is traditional for working a voting station. Yeah, that's all I can add right now. If there's more information that we have, we could definitely add it to the question and answer. But yes, these are long shifts. They are long hours. There are breaks. You will receive many breaks because there are downtimes in the voting station. It's not go, go, go all day. So there are times when you will have downtimes to take breaks and have little breathers. What else can I add to that? I think that's it. Yeah, that just those are standard times. We do, of course, have slightly earlier opening dates just for accessibility to make sure that because there's so many candidates for this election, we're making the hours longer to ensure that everyone has access to voting.
Thank you. And we're nearing the end of our time, so just one last question. So how do you get to vote yourself if you are working the advance polls and election day?
Yeah, I'm going to use myself as an example. So I'm going to vote during advance vote. I'm going to choose a day that I can attend after work, and I'm going to vote at one of the advance vote stations, which will likely be, I think on the website, there's an area where you can find my voting station, and then you'll also be able to view where you can vote during the advance vote as well. So that will be, for me, working during the day, that will be what I will be choosing.
Right.
And then for election workers, who, let's say an election worker is working all 7 days of the advance vote and election day, they could have the option to use a mail-in ballot.
That's right. So mail-in ballots, our applications for mail-in ballots are now open on the website as well for people. And if you do qualify for a mail-in ballot if you are working during the advance vote and election day. The locations of, and this was also a question and just sort of ties into what you were just saying, so maybe we'll close it off here. The list of voting stations for advance vote and for election day will be made available in September as we're just still finalizing some of those details. But I think that brings us to 11 o'clock. Thank you everyone for participating and for sharing your questions. I think we got through quite a few, but I understand that there might be many more who were not answered. So we will group them together and post them online along with a copy of the presentation and a recording of this session. So thank you all again and have a great day.
Awesome. Thank you.